Jay from Volunteer Audio. We've been seeing a lot of calls and a lot of messages and forums about the Sony AX7000 radio. So I want to take a minute, I wanted to talk about the radio and then show you how to properly set it up on your bike. Because even if you buy the best equipment, if you set it up wrong, you're not going to get good results. Sony's made us a great product, and I want to go over how to make sure that you get the most out of the money you spend on it. First, I'm going to start telling you about this CVO. This is a beautiful bike. We just did a full changeover from the Boom Stage 2 audio system to all Hertz speakers using the Sony AX7000, and I'll show you in a minute how it works. But let's talk about the radio first. Our stock Harley radio has many flaws. One of the most common we see is the people with the older GT nav radio. Has navigation, but it's missing Apple CarPlay, it's missing Android Auto, and don't forget about the 45-second, maybe a minute boot time it takes to get your Bluetooth to turn on and to work. So this has been a very popular upgrade, whether you have the base model radio or if you have the stock navigation radio. Sony has answered all of the questions and all the issues we have as being Harley riders. First, we have a water-sealed front button bar to keep water from getting into the face of the radio if it rains. If you buy this radio from Volunteer Audio, you'll see we actually wrap the top and the sides with a laminated sticker. It has our contact info if you need help on installing, but it also keeps water out of the radio. With these features in place, we have a 3-year warranty, even against water. So in the harshest environment on earth, your Harley, we're going to warranty this for 3 years. It's going to add Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which you probably didn't have factory. It's also going to have 2 sets of USB inputs for USB music on a flash drive. It's going to do AM/FM and Sirius XM capable. I mean, just about anything you could want out of a radio, this is going to do. There are many setup features inside that I'm fixing to walk you through to make sure you get better sound that you also don't have out of your stock radio. And don't forget, if you're going to put an amp on the original radio, you have to take it somewhere and get it flashed to correct an awful EQ curve that's already fixed right inside of this Sony radio. When you get this from Volunteer Audio, or if you bought one somewhere else, you're going to need some of these parts most likely. But from Volunteer Audio, we use our Scotia installation parts. Uses a heavy-duty metal bracket that bolts in just like the factory radio. Also has the holes on top for the original radio plate that bolt back down. It's going to come completely pre-wired. It retains your thumb controls and plugs right into the factory Harley harness. But the biggest improvement is this huge amplifier inside. So your stock radio does under 10 watts a channel. This radio is going to do about 45 watts of continuous power at 4 ohms, about 80 watts at 2 ohm, and it's 100 watt per channel peak. So we get a 400 watt amplifier right inside of our radio. Super simple to install, no running some large wiring like you would on a normal amplifier, and it retains all the factory harnessing without cutting anything, so you are going to be able to maintain all your factory warranties. Let's get this turned on. I'm going to go through some of the settings with you, because even though you've bought this radio and you've put it in your bike, now I'm going to show you how to get the most sound out of it, the most clarity, so that you can hear it doing 100 miles an hour going down the road. Alright, so you've installed your Sony radio in your Harley. If you got it from a Volunteer Audio, we have this awesome background preloaded in to make it look like it should be on your bike. But I want to go over some of the setup features with you. When you first turn it on, it's going to ask you if you want to turn off demo mode, which you're going to want to do so it doesn't continually flash and tell you about the radio. It's also going to ask you to set up the time, so do that when you first boot it up. Let's talk more so about sound. That's where I'm mostly concerned. I want to make sure you get the most out of your radio. We're going to, on the face of this radio, on the home screen, if you press home, this is the screen you see, you're going to have these 5 options. It's going to have your tuner, your Sirius XM, Bluetooth audio, phone, and USB. But if you swipe over, you're going to get 3 more options. USB port 2, rear camera if you attach one, and the settings menu. So we want to start by going into settings. Inside settings, we have 4 different menus. We have our general menu, where you're going to do things like set up the time or turn off demo. We're going to have sound, which is going to give all of our audio settings, visual to change the way the radio looks, and also Bluetooth for our Bluetooth connectivity. So let's start in general. In general, we want to make sure we always turn off demo so it doesn't just continually flash while we're going down the road. If you don't want the annoying beep, every time you hit a button, you can turn the beep off. All right, so let's say you bought your radio somewhere other than Volunteer Audio and you see that your firmware is the wrong version. Now you're going to want to make sure this is up to date so that your phone works correctly with your radio. Well, if you hit update, it's going to tell you to enter, to put a USB in. We don't have a USB connected, so it's going to probably give us an error message here. So what you do is you're going to go to Sony's website, sony.com, look up the XAV-AX7000 in their support section. You'll download your firmware update. There's directions on there to a USB flash drive, and you're going to connect it to one of the USBs that you've connected to your radio. Now, most of you are probably thinking right now, I only have one USB, because stock only had one USB. We sell on Volunteer Audio's website a dual USB with the factory grommet to replace and give you options for both of those. And when you do an update, you will need both ports. You start in USB 1, it's going to run a certain amount of the update, and it's going to tell you to move it to USB number 2. So another good reason to make sure you have 2 USB ports exposed so you don't have to remove your fairing to do a software update. All right, so we're going to back out of firmware, and let's go to our next menu. Let's go to sound. I'm going to go over some of these options, and there's even an advanced menu that we may have to go into. So we have extra bass. This is a smart bass control from Sony. The louder you turn the radio, it actually starts cutting the bass down some so it doesn't distort at high volumes. It's a very smart idea. I don't normally go past extra bass 1 to keep it clear, because the more bass we give, the more distortion we're going to have at loud volumes. Now EQ. You're going to have custom EQs and a bunch of preset EQs. I would advise you to leave the bass portion of your EQ, the left 3 bands, down. If you bring those up, all you're going to do is limit your total volume and add a lot of distortion. Vocals are going to be the middle range, and treble is going to be here on this end. Most of the time we find people enjoy it when it looks more of a curve on the high end and it stays pretty flat on the low end on a Harley. We also have our digital soundstage organizer, or DSO. This normally makes speakers sound like they're higher. If you're in a vehicle, it's going to move the sound from the lower portion of the door up to your dash. In a Harley, we have perfect placement, so normally I leave that setting off. It's going to go louder if you do. Balance and fader. If you have rear speakers, this is going to give you the option to go a little bit more toward your rear 6x9s or rear 6.5s to even out that sound. You also have a left and right adjustment. Now let's go to our advanced sound menu. Now there's some very important things in this menu I want to go over with you. When you're riding a Harley, as soon as your engine reaches a certain speed, it creates its own bass notes. With the wind going by and the bass of the engine, you cannot hear distortion from your speakers. If you turn your speakers up to the point that they distort and you leave it there, you're going to blow your speakers, which is not going to make you happy. If we turn our high pass filter on and we turn it to 80 hertz or higher, we are blocking sub bass. Your 6.5s cannot play sub bass clearly anyways. If you turn this on, it's going to block that sub bass from playing. You're going to go higher in volume, and your music's going to sound super clear. Low pass filter does not matter. You can turn it off, you can set it wherever you want. It's only going to matter if you've added an amp and you have true subwoofers on your bike. Subwoofer direct mode is something that we're not going to turn on a Harley. You're going to notice some of these are actually grayed out. We have subwoofer phase. You're not going to care about that because you don't have a subwoofer most likely. And then we have our speaker impedance load. So Sony they knew this was going to go on a Harley. Most of your stock speakers are 2 ohm. If you run the stock fuse in the back of this radio, it's a 15 amp fuse, and you run 2 ohm speakers and you go to full volume on an extended amount of time, you will most likely blow that fuse. This radio pulls 18 amps of current with a 2 ohm load at full volume. Now, the correct solution is put a 20 amp fuse in it. Leave it on 4 ohm, which is going to give you the strongest output on your radio, and you're not going to worry about blowing that fuse. If this is on 2 ohm, all it does is turn the internal amplifier down to about half volume, which we don't want. We want to be able to hear it clearly, so check that. If you notice it's grayed out, it won't let you adjust it. The only way to adjust this menu is to hit your option button, turn source off, go back into settings, go back to sound, advanced menu, and now you're going to find out it's no longer grayed out and we can make those adjustments. Another thing that I think is really important is the volume limiter. There's a couple scenarios where this comes in really, really nice. So the handlebar controls on these Harleys are a little touchy, and sometimes they will go up in volume much quicker than you think they should. So I would always advise you, while you're sitting in a garage, a quiet place without your bike running, turn your radio up. Keep turning it up till you hear your speakers start to distort or to sound bad. turn it back down just to where it's at its loudest, clearest point, and take note of what volume that is and set this limiter to that volume. So let's say 45 is the loudest that you've got. Let's turn our bike back on. All right, so let's say that 45 is the loudest we thought it was clear. Set this to 45. That's going to keep you from, when you're riding down the road with all the wind noise and the motor noise, from going too loud and blowing your speakers. Another scenario that's great for this is if you've installed an aftermarket amplifier, if you'll take a meter when you set the gains, find out what the maximum volume or radio will go clear, and do the same thing. Set a volume limiter so you're not tempted to go past the highest volume point and you don't blow your speakers. Now, if you see it goes clear all the way to volume 50, and there are cases when it does that. If I put a set of Hertz SX165 Neo speakers on this radio, they are so efficient and so clear that I can go to volume 50 clearly, loudly, and you'll tell yourself, I don't need an amplifier. This is so loud. How could it be louder than this? So leave it off in the case when you're using a good set of efficient, clear speakers. Let's back out and go over the next couple menus here. So we also have our visual menu. This is really important. The number one thing we see people say about these radios in the forums that I read or the comments I see left is that the brightness of the screen's not enough. And I'll tell you that is bull. This thing is just as bright as a GTS radio or a factory GT nav radio. No matter what you do, if you hold your phone in the sun or this radio directly in the sun, it's going to be hard to see the display. But the biggest reason we see that only happens is people don't have their illumination set right. So dimmer for monitor and illumination, we want to turn off. If we turn that off, our radio is never going to dim. And a lot of people are wiring up an illumination wire and they're not even realizing it. They've bought the parts, they're just connecting them up. And the orange and white illumination wire, anytime your headlight's on, is going to dim this screen. If we dim this screen, of course, it's not going to be bright enough. So the solution would be turn your headlight off. Well, we've got a Harley. We can't turn our headlight off. So just make sure and turn this off and you'll always be on the brightest screen possible on your radio. Let's back out and go to Bluetooth. You'll see we have a Bluetooth reset. That's going to delete all of the old pairings if you ever wanted to. And we also have our Bluetooth connection on. This is not where we're going to pair our device. We'll do that actually in our Bluetooth menu. Now if you'll follow these settings, turn on your high pass filter, don't turn your bass up too much in your EQ, and use a good set of efficient speakers such as our Hertz Neo series speakers, you're going to find that this is the best sounding. It's just mind-blowing how loud it is, how clear it is out of a radio. And this is a small chassis radio when you look at the back of it. It also has 5-volt pre-outs if you decided to later add an amp, but with the right speakers you're not going to need to do that. When you buy it from Volunteer Audio, you're going to get tech support. It's lifetime. You're going to get 3-year warranty on the radio, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure you have the best buying experience. Remember what I said, you're going to want a dual USB port. It doesn't only come with the radio, but we do have it in stock at volunteeraudio.com, and we try to always not be the cheapest. We want to have the best parts, but in most cases we end up also being the least expensive place to buy this radio. So better service, better parts, at volunteeraudio.com. I hope this video has helped you. If you didn't buy the radio from us, we still want you to be happy with your Sony radio. So go through these settings. If this video helped you, please like the video, comment. If you want to hear what one of these does in a walk-away video with some good speakers on it with no extra amp, send me a message. I'll be happy to email it to you, to forward it to you. Subscribe to us and turn on the notification icon. We're going to have a lot of videos about Harley audio. I think they'll all be helpful and useful to you. I hope this has helped you. Have a good day and God bless.